The following piece is part of Uncollected, a collection of peculiar prose and poetry, a project by OLOMOPOLO Media with the support of the Embassy of France in Pakistan and the Alliance Francais.
The Unwitting Widow, written by Alishba Arif, read by the author. Dedicated to chosen families. May we all have the fortune to know them. Lahore 2024, sometime in February. Ever since it happened, I've heard just about everything. No one knows how to make sense of your grief. The worst were the sincere advices from my mother I would much rather avoid. बेटा कोई काम हो तो हमें बताना, अच्छा नहीं लगता, तुम बेवा हो, लोग तरह तरह की बातें करते हैं. अम्मा इद्दत खत्म हो चुकी है. फिर भी अच्छा नहीं लगता. I bite my tongue and shrug, even though she can't see me over the phone. I got married to win her silence. I am reminded of our wedding day. She didn't shed a single tear during my nikah. Only relief registered in her face after marrying off her only daughter. अच्छा बाद में बात करती हूँ. काम पर जाना है. Alia click. 8 years ago. My best friend's first kiss was in the car. I know because I was there pretending to be asleep. Thankfully, it was quiet and lasted just a few seconds. I remember it clearly since I parallel parked your car in the alley to Jamal's place just like you taught me. Only this time, I got it right. 2 minute aankhon ko sukoon chahiye, I announced. It had been a long day. In response, Jamal took another drag of the J. I'm pretty sure that's when it happened, in the back seat. I squeezed my eyes shut, almost on instinct. It was over before I opened them. Ahad was beside me riding shotgun and telling me how to get out of the position I had parked. Jamal was nowhere to be found and my phone was blaring with a familiar ringtone. I didn't need to glance down at it to know Amma was calling to ask my whereabouts. I don't think we ever spoke about it until much later, that day on the bench. It made me realize that growing up, most of us choose not to discuss these things, even with our closest friends. We hold on to the butterflies and welcome sleep with our racing hearts and hormones. Jamal ko lene jana hai? I asked Ahad breathlessly, tumbling into the car. I was met with his wordless glance. I guess not. We spent the rest of the ride with both of us staring determinedly ahead, willing the other to break the silence. I wasn't expecting you to crack first. Literally. I didn't need to glance twice before I saw the hot tears burn in the corner of your eyes. We had shed tears together before, but not like this. The only time was when Abba died. The tears never came in front of Amma, but they did in front of you at the funeral. I don't remember how we made it to the bench of the park next to Uni. What I do remember is you sobbing in my arms uncontrollably the way I did before. It was over before it began. That fucker. What did he do? I asked, surprising myself, knowing he was referring to Jabal. Married Anita, of course, came the bitter reply in between sobs. Oh. If anyone were to look our way, they would see 2 students bunking a class. People rarely see what's right in front of them. If they look closely, they would see someone with a thorn in his eyes and a girl who fashioned herself into an anchor, one determined to stick its landing. They say what you love is your fate. This was where ours intertwined. She was different. I know everyone says that when feelings are involved, but when you live in the city of graveyards, a little hope can feel like a prayer that could bring back the dead. Their family moved next door after the last tenants shifted back to Karachi many years ago. Their daughter arrived one fateful summer during her holidays from university. I would often catch glimpses of her pacing around the balcony, her fervent glances in the darkness that engulfed the neighborhood before she lit a cigarette. Samina was her name. She caught me staring one time and winked playfully while putting a finger to her lips. Unexpected warmth flushed my cheeks. One time, she gestured at me and tossed a cigarette box into my balcony. I'm not much of a smoker, but how could I refuse? Her chuckle while I struggled to contain the coughs so to not wake up Amma made me want to hear its symphony for as long as I lived. जरा बयानी साथ वालों को देखकर आओ, पिछले हफ्ते उन्होंने दी थी, said Amma. I didn't need to be asked twice. She greeted me at the door with a smile that made me think she was expecting me. It wasn't long before this back and forth led me to be invited in. She showed me her room before she showed me what lay underneath her blouse. Just like the sky gives way under the weight of rain, so does desire burn a hole in the sky, heat upon skin. The edges of me continue to dissolve into you. There is no sweeter innocence than our gentle sin. I went home with a glow only I could feel, one I never imagined would be possible. I should have known it was all too good to be true. I got Ahad's frantic calls at 3 a.m. after I missed his text messages. He said the same thing in both. Come downstairs, now, please. Click. Upon opening the door, I was greeted by a bloodied Ahad. Your face had been bruised like someone had punched it. My hand came instinctively to my mouth as a wordless scream pushed out of me. You held up your hands in protest and pointed upstairs. I sidestepped to let you tiptoe past Amma's room into mine. You collapsed almost immediately onto my bed, blankly staring at the wall. That's when my words found me. You gonna tell me why you're bleeding over my bed sheets? No answer. For fuck's sake, Ahad, my voice shaking with rage. I'm pretty sure you heard me the first time. I need Abhinay. I knelt beside him and poked his leg. He let out a wince that I ignored. What the hell is that supposed to mean? Start talking. Do not make me call your dad. That made him sit up. You wouldn't. You and I both know I don't want to, but you owe me an explanation. You have 5 minutes. He sighed and laid back down on my ruined bed sheets. I should have never used the app. Is it the one I'm thinking of? Ignoring the question, he asked me to meet him in a park aaj raat ko. I wished I hadn't gone. It's not fun to hear how your life is only good for a gutter while being punched in the face. Gulp. How did you get away? When I came to, I called you. I'm sorry for dragging you into this. I didn't know where to go. Sigh. I lay down next to him, our fingers barely touching. The whir of the fan was the only sound in the background. Don't scare me like that, I whispered. I'm sorry. Why didn't you tell me sooner? I didn't know how. I laced my fingers with his. You've always known. You just forgot. I didn't need to look his way to see the pool of tears in his eyes. A loud snore pulsated from the other room, startling both of us. आंटी के खराटे माशाल्लाह से बड़े ताकतवर हैं. I nudged him. Ow! बस कर, इसलिए तेरी और मेरी शामत नहीं आई. उठो इससे पहले कि उनकी नमाज का अलार्म बजे. Okay, I'm up. We tiptoed back outside. Before I shut the door, I whispered, Tell your dad you got into a fight and you won. You really think that'll work? Of course. Just remember to say you should have seen the other guy. He grinned for the first time since he got here, as the door clicked shut. Tell me one good reason to stay in Lahore, Samina asked me almost playfully. You mean all this isn't reason enough? I replied, gesturing at myself from the edge of Samina's too small a bed. Of course it is. It's why Brighton is so much better for both of us. I smiled and shook my head. What's the beach like over there? I asked quietly without meeting her gaze. She pulled out her phone and got to Googling it. Very rocky, it seems. I peered over the edge of her phone as she scrolled through image after image, wondering what it would be like to build a life there, wondering if I even wanted it. I think you like it, came the hopeful answer. It does look pretty, to be honest. I hoisted myself up and started to pace around her room. You don't think about these things. You just kind of hope for the best. She brought her knees to her forehead, resting the weight of her head on them, and let out a sigh. You know I can't. The silence that followed was loud. I think she hoped I would finally change my mind. I wish I did, that it was that easy. The day she asked if I would follow her back while she completed her degree, I almost said yes. Ahad had started joking about how I'd start speaking in a fake British accent when I told him about her proposition. That's when it hit me what all of this meant, starting over from scratch, with nothing but some half-misplaced faith, giving up everything familiar and the only people who really knew me, people like Ahad. As bad as this place was, I didn't want to leave. It was all I've ever known. I knew exactly how to navigate it. This, however, was uncharted territory, one I would inevitably sink in. How do you murder an old life for a new one? More importantly, why should I? Does Brighton have any Havelis tucked away in its streets? Samina looked up wearing a wry smile and shook her head dejectedly. Lahore has everything, I thought to myself. I just wish it had you too. Samina called me before she was about to board. Last chance to make a dash for it. I'm sure the seat next to me would be free. I'll bet it's the window seat. Her voice breezed through the phone. I squeezed my eyes shut. I'm going to miss you. Pause. I'll miss you too, came the quiet reply. Boarding ticket, please, said a voice in the background. Promise me you'll visit. I don't care how long it takes. I will, wondering how in the world I was going to pull that off. ये I miss you कल रात को फोन पर किसको बोल रही थी? My blood froze. Amma started her interrogation early today, I thought to myself. I kept my voice as steady as I could. पता नहीं किसकी बात कर रही है. I reached for this chai cup. I wasn't born yesterday, you know. A mother always knows. Great. She wasn't going to let this one go. I could already tell. It was Ahad, I said almost defiantly. Something told me that would be the better choice. Amma stared back at me, muttering something under her breath that I didn't quite catch. To this day, I'm sure it was मुझे पता था. If only Zain Malik knew what a heartthrob he is in this part of the world. पूरे लाहौर के नाई उसकी प्यारी शक्ल के नाम पे कारोबार चला रहे हैं. यहाँ तो sensation ही बिकता है, I replied, bending down to fix my worn-out shoe strap. I looked up just in time to see Ahad staring wistfully at the salon billboard in the middle of the bazaar. अम्मा ने शादी का पूछा. और तुमने क्या बोला? I can't imagine taking on life with anyone other than my best friend. He turns around to look at me slowly. I don't know why, but my breath felt like it's caught in my throat. Neither can I. There was a surprising softness in his voice. How's that for sensation? The best kind. I found myself smiling for the first time in weeks. The wedding was a whirlwind of emotions. Amma fussed over my outfit among other things. ज़्यादा मुस्कुराना मत. दुल्हन अच्छी नहीं लगती. These were the words she left me with before she stepped off the stage. I'm too tired to retort. It was a period of weeping indebted tears and staying tight-lipped. Ahad sat next to me with his once tousled hair slicked back. One hand splayed over his thigh. तुम बचपन में इतनी बड़ी टॉमबॉय थी. अब देखो कितनी खूबसूरत लग रही हो. तुम्हारी शादी पर आने की अलग ही बात है. आंटी मलीहा cooed. बस साहब की दुआएं, I replied with gritted teeth. Ahad must have noticed because his pinky discreetly found contact with mine to loop together before we stepped out of their lives and into our own. Uncle Pervez was a man of direct questions. He worried about his son. Why doesn't Ahad take an interest in sports? Why did he want to pursue fashion designing? Maybe that's why he looked just as relieved as Amma did on our wedding day. Both of them had morphed into abandoned lighthouses in our lives. शादी सब चीज़ों पर पर्दा डाल देती है. Maybe that's how Ahad was finally able to share his debut designs with the world. He prepared for weeks, sourcing the fabric from Liberty. Sometimes I'd go with him. The men there were as old as us. Their eyes were radiant, yet there was a restlessness there peeking beneath the surface. Ahad hovers over one of them making a choli. His fingers trace it with a longing only I can see, but just for a split second. Let's come back here tomorrow, he says. You sure? He turns away and coughs in response. तबीयत खराब हो रही है. No sooner do the words leave his lips, he collapses forward. I am on my knees, immediately trying to rouse you. When I flip you over onto your back, your lips have turned blue with blood dribbling down your mouth. It's only when your body twitches like an uncontrollable earthquake do I find myself screaming for help. A crowd of men starts to form like a parasite. None of them move towards the hysterical woman wailing over her best friend's non-existent breaths. मैडम जी ये आपका शोहर है? नहीं, I think to myself, मेरा सब कुछ है. Husband doesn't even begin to cover it. मैडम? मेरे हैं. क्या? I don't know which soul gained the wisdom to call an ambulance. It takes what feels like a lifetime to reach us. The ride is a blur. There's a lump the size of a tennis ball caught in my throat. I sit in the backseat of the ambulance and take deep breaths as the cold highway air smacks me in the face. My hand is intertwined with yours, but you don't squeeze it back, not even a little. I think that's when I knew. December. I've never felt heartbreak quite this sharp. Nothing prepares you for it, especially the aftermath. His things are still in my room, gathering dust. They no longer count as his. The clothes will never be worn unless handed over to someone, nor will the money be spent. Our home will never be the same. To call it just mine feels wrong. It's just a bunch of walls with secrets woven into them. The kitchen you taught me how to break dance in. The folding table where I typed. It's a distant memory. I cried not for the house, but for the memories I could have made in it before I lost you. I hated your snoring, but what I wouldn't give to hear it again. Love lingers, because anytime anyone asks me how I'm doing, I know I'm better off because of you. I will love again, but not like this. Present day February. I've never been too big on adornments. Beva aurat in mourning and all. It feels like the world is trying to rip every beautiful thing away from me. Maybe that's why I wear sparkly earrings to work. Some heads turn to stare at me in the office, but at this point I don't care much. You would have loved them, and that's all that matters. One death was tragic enough. There needn't be two.
For other stories and poems from this collection, follow OLOMOPOLO on Instagram, Facebook, SoundCloud, and YouTube.